Whatever stage of the year you're at with your riding, whether you've just finished or started a season, or if you're just going to go and tear up some muddy trails on your off-road bikes, then making sure your bike is well maintained and race ready is vital for the longevity of your bikes. So this video is going to demonstrate to you how best to look after your pride and joy year round. Now to do this, I've brought in our in-house MBR extraordinaire, James Bracey. Okay, so look at the state of this. I mean, like, where on earth do we start?
Yeah, it is a messy bike, and there's no getting away from the fact that, like, if you race cyclocross or you just like to go off-road like this, your bike will end up looking like this. So the first thing to do is to give it a general wash over. So you want to get rid of all of these big chunky bits of muck everywhere so you can see what's going on underneath it. So that's definitely the first thing. So hose or brush, wash it all off first of all before you can concentrate on the most important parts. Probably the most important bit, and the bit that makes your bike go forward, is your drivetrain. So this bit here is what you're going to look at first of all. So once you've kind of cleaned off all of this horrible stuff, I don't even want to touch it at the moment.
And it smells really bad as well.
It's not good. It's not good.
Really not good.
Yeah. So the chain is very, very important. If you don't get it clean, it's just going to get all that horrible mucky gunk mixed in with the chain oil, and that will eventually almost turn into a grinding paste and wear things away.
So it'll ruin your components.
It can. Yeah, right, absolutely. Okay. And it could be that if you don't think about that, after a season, you could be looking at having to replace chain rings, cassette, everything, which can be quite expensive.
Awful lot, man.
Yeah. So once you've sort of cleaned off all of the horrible little bits, you want to be using a good degreaser. Okay. So a degreaser is something that you can use that will basically break down all of the muck, and so all of that horrible black gunky stuff. And then once you've broken down that muck, you can get it clean and nice and shiny again. And while you're there as well, you can use that degreaser to just basically pick off all of the little mucky bits on your chain rings, on your jockey wheels as well, okay, and your cassette. So make sure that that is nice and shiny and sparkly. Don't panic if there's still a bit of muck left on it afterwards, because we're going to clean the rest of the bike in a second anyway. So that's number one. Once you've done that bit, then the next thing you want to be doing is you want to be using a general cleaner on the whole bike. The thing to remember is when you clean a bike is mud and water will wash downwards. So always start from the top of the bike. Obviously this goes against what I just said in terms of doing the drivetrain first of all, but obviously bearing in mind we want to get that's the most important thing. And then as I said, we start cleaning. And you can either use a brush or a hose to sort of try and wash off all of the muck that's left on it. I would personally use a brush as well. So because obviously a hose doesn't get everything off. So use a brush, but the important thing with your brush as well is to make sure you rinse it all the time, because otherwise all you're getting is you're getting all of that grit and muck there and you're rubbing it into the frame, which can obviously scratch it. Yeah. So we want to be really careful.
Do you use a soft bristle brush then? Or?
Soft bristle brush.
Soft bristle brush.
Exactly. It's easy for you to
Basil
say.
Brush.
Yes, so that is what I would definitely be using from the start. Obviously that won't get all of the muck off, so a hard bristle brush is great for you on your tyres as well. Now it might take a while to do, because one thing that lots of people forget is they forget there's an underside to the bike as well. So you might need to turn the bike upside down to clean some of the bits, and then turn it back over because the mud's then run back to the top, and then wash it again.
So I've got a bit of a quick question actually on degreasing. So I've seen people over the years use white spirit. Is this a good thing or a bad thing to use for a bike?
Well, white spirits is something that definitely is effective in what it does. The only problem with white spirits really is an environmental issue. So it's a very, very powerful corrosive material or liquid, and it can damage the environment. So I would personally recommend something
not to use it then.
Pretty much most of today's like sort of cycling and cleaning products are pretty environmentally friendly, but just check on the bottle, okay?
So how does it also affect bearing quality? Does it degrade bearings quick if you use a degreaser, or is it something you've got to be careful of where you're putting it? Or?
Absolutely. One thing about it is, because it's a degreaser, it will get rid of the grease.
Strip it out, will it?
So when you use the degreaser, you want to be applying it directly to the area that you want to go to. So you don't just spray it all over the place. If it's a spray one, you want to apply it in very, very sort of small amounts in the right areas.
Right, so when we've done that then, what do we tackle next? We've got a clean frame, we've got a clean cassette, chain and chain rings. Where do we go from here?
So the next thing I'd probably like to look at is your tyres. One of the things you can do is when you're cleaning your bike is to check the quality of the tyres to make sure there's no damage to them as well. So once you've sort of like cleaned the tyres, you can do a nice visual inspection and use your fingers if you want to, and then just make sure that they're safe, because obviously once you've cleaned the bike, you're getting it ready to ride again. So you want to make sure it's ready to ride.
So just checking it for like what, nails, flint, cuts in the tyres?
Absolutely, absolutely. Any sort of cuts in tyres, any bulges, any damage to it that could potentially cause a puncture which will stop you racing next time or stop you riding is something to be sort of like checked straight away.
So obviously braking is very important. I mean, we don't want to crash, do we? But with disc brakes, I mean, I've known a lot of people to be very wary when they clean disc brakes, like with getting, you know, potentially oil on the pads or the rotor or whatever. What are the most important things to focus on when you're cleaning disc brakes? The
real important thing is basically not to worry. So when you go to clean your bike, clean it. Okay, so your standard like bike cleaners won't cause any damage to the discs or the disc rotors or anything like that. Then, yeah? So absolutely, clean them as you would do a normal rim brake. The big issue is when it comes to afterwards and when it comes to actually doing the oiling. So this is where...
That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, this is where you can really ruin your disc brakes. The real important thing is when it comes to obviously sort of like re-lubing your bike is to make sure that you protect your brakes. So you don't get any lube or anything near the rotor or the pads itself. So there are a few little things on the market that you can use to sort of protect that, but probably one of the simplest things is to get a piece of paper, just an everyday normal A4 piece of paper.
This sounds like a bodge.
Again, it could well be a little bit of a bodge. Cut a little slit halfway through, and then you can slot that in between the hub and the rotor, and then that will protect. So if you do spray anything on it, it will potentially sort of stop it from going onto the pads and the rotor itself. So it's super simple to use, and then you can just do that.
So obviously, lubing a chain is very important. I mean, over the years, I've also done a little bit of light lubing in the rear mech and the front mech. I kind of figured that because there's springs there and there's some moving parts, that maybe I should put a bit of lube there as well. Is this something which I should be doing, or is it not really that needed?
You're right in terms of the chain is the most important part, and that is really the only major moving part in your drivetrain that needs to be lubed. But because the derailleurs do have moving parts themselves, then a little bit of a light spray lube isn't a problem in terms of spraying it on there. That will help them to maintain their life for a lot longer. But the important thing really is once you have used that spray over it, is to then wipe off any excess, because that excess, that gunky stuff that will be over will pick up more dirt again, so it'll mean that you'll be cleaning a lot more regularly.
Right, so the frame is foamed up, it looks pretty clean, same with the derailleur, the cassette and the chain. Can we use a pressure washer on this, or do we have to get a bucket and sponge again of clean water?
Well, pressure washers are again one of those sort of controversial subjects when it comes to cleaning bikes. Because of their nature, they are very powerful, so can cause you problems if you use them in the wrong way. I personally do use a pressure washer, and I know that the majority of sort of teams and mechanics will use pressure washers, and if you go to a cyclocross race, you'll see pressure washers everywhere because they are effective in what they do. But the important thing is to make sure that you use the right technique. You do not want to be spraying into the bearings. That's the big thing, because all you'll do then is that powerful jet of water will push the dirt into your bearings, and that will cause them to wear out. Yeah, absolutely.
Is it going to cause damage, like if you're having it direct on the frame, or is it just the bearings we need to be careful of?
Like everything else, the closer you put the jet, the more powerful it's going to be over a smaller area. And yes, it will strip off stickers or anything else like that. Paint-wise, no, it's not going to be as dangerous on that.
If you're racing regularly or preparing for a big event, then timely maintenance and preparation prior to that day is absolutely vital.
No matter what the weather or terrain, you should plan accordingly and make sure you've got the right equipment for the job. And especially for something like cyclocross, which is pretty extreme, then these bikes can take an absolute hammering, especially if it's really wet and muddy, as you can see with the bike here.
Here are 4 things which you can do to give yourself the upper hand on race day should something go wrong or the weather takes a turn for the worst.
First and foremost, if you've seen cyclocross, you'll see that most races will have a spare bike. Now this means that if anything happens to your race bike during that race, especially if it's wet and muddy, then you can jump on that and you can carry on your race. Now, it sounds a bit frivolous, but it's something that will certainly help you get the most out of the racing. And this doesn't just apply to cyclocross. Having a spare bike is good for any discipline of racing. But if you don't have a spare bike, then certainly the other thing to look at are your tyre choice. Depending on conditions, you want to choose tyres that will suit what the terrain is going to be like. So mud tyres for mud, a far tyre for sand, or something in between if you're going to be racing a lot of different surfaces. And then even simpler than that is to make sure that you are carrying some decent chain lube with you. So chain lube is different depending on the conditions as well. So there's either wet lube or dry lube. So if you're racing in lots of muddy conditions, then a good thick wet lube will help keep your gears working as perfectly as they can for as long as they can. Whereas in the dry conditions, a lighter dry lube will certainly help you to maintain that sort of good gear change without picking up too much muck.
Now the last, this could well be a game changer, especially for cyclocross. Now, as you can see, this bike behind us has collected mud like there's no tomorrow. And this could be your saviour. So there are a lot of post-wash treatment products on the market. This one in particular actually repels water, dirt, dust, and everything else in between. This small bottle will cover 2 frames, or 2 complete bikes in fact. It's not just the frame. You can cover your components, your wheels, everything, and it will force water and dirt off it straight away. So this frame coating actually works as a great product to use pre-storage. So as I said, it repels dust and it prevents corrosion and oxidization of your bike when it's left for months at a time.
So that's 4 things you can do to give yourself the upper hand if things go wrong during a race or if the weather is really bad. If you're putting your bike away for the season, however, here are some checks that you can do to your bike before you put it away so you don't hit the panic button when you come to pick your bike up in 6 months' time. Firstly, you want to make sure you've checked your tyres for any cuts or any flints that might cause damage. So when it comes to bringing that bike out, you want to make sure those tyres are working perfectly again. Secondly, you want to be checking your chain. There's no point putting your bike away with a worn chain. You might as well take that chain off and put a new one on so it's ready to go when it comes to the next season. Associated with chain wear, you also want to check your chain rings and your cassette for any excess wear. So you want to make sure that the teeth look even and there's no sort of like missing or gapped bits on both that and also your cassette. Again, if those are badly worn, there's no point putting it away like that. You might as well put some new ones on ready for the next season. After that, the next thing to check are your brake pads. So whether you've got disc brakes or rim brakes, check that those brake pads still have life. And if they, again, are too badly worn, which is definitely going to be the case at the end of a really hard race season, then get rid of those, put some new ones in, happy days. And the final check, and this is really only associated if you do use rim brakes, is to check your rims for any excess wear. Obviously, rim brakes will wear out even metal or carbon rims over time, so make sure that those aren't too badly worn either.
So once you're completely confident that everything is fine on your bike, roll it away. And I know we've treated this frame with a dirt, water and dust repellent, but do you know what? Chuck a dust cover over it anyway, and it will help keep that bike in absolutely pristine condition, ready for when you roll it out next spring.
And if you are riding a lot and you don't want any complaints about your personal hygiene, some of the other things to think about are your helmet and shoes. These can pick up odors and make them really, really bad smelling. So we've cleaned the bike smells lovely, so you might as well smell lovely as well. Then one of the things to really consider is washing your pads and your shoes regularly. If you don't want to go through that about taking all the pads out and everything, one of the things you can get is you can get some products that are effectively odor eliminators. And these are designed to be used with cycling shoes and cycling helmets. So they're not going to cause any problems at all. Really simple to use. All you're going to do is just spray it on the insides of your pads, leave that dry, and that will cure those problems. So that's something else to really consider.
So we hope you found this video useful. If you did and you want to show your support, give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And like always, if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section down below and we'll see you soon.